So first of all, we're going to go through 5 actionable tasks you need to hit the ground running in September. You need to do these tasks over the summer, and you need to introduce these into your learning. All right. This isn't the traditional, I'll read your books. This is not the traditional, you must do exams every day, you must get practicing, make sure you do this. No, we're not going to be focusing on goals. We're going to be focusing on the processes. Okay. So how do we get those summer gains? And I'm not talking about those muscles. We're talking about how do we get that foundational gain to prepare you for that September new beginning. Whether that's going into year 12 or going into year 13, you need to be prepared for that predicted grade that those teachers are going to give you. You need to be prepared for the uptick in the difficulty of the knowledge and the quantity of the content that you need to learn. So these 5 will really help you prepare or be prepared for that. So even if you don't do these during the summer, which I would suggest 99% of the time that you do, have these formed and ready for the beginning of that new term. So first of all, active learning. What is active learning? I don't mean open up a textbook, right, let's read through these textbooks, let's read through what content we need to understand, what topics in economics are coming up in year 13. Oh, is this market structures? Is this, do we need to understand exchange rates and balance of payments? No, I don't mean that. What I mean by active learning is essentially the premise of understanding everything that goes on with your subject area. So from an economics point of view, it's very key that you know what's going on around you in the news. And that right now is probably the most important thing. So how many of you really and truly have your notifications enabled from the BBC, from the Guardian, from the FT, from the Economist to update you on what's going on in and around the world, or just the economy in general? So making sure that you understand those day-to-day changes of what's going on in the world today. Now, prime example of this is something with regards to inflation that we have today. So the high levels of inflation that we have today are very different to the low inflation that we've had over the last 12 to 15 years. So understanding the changes and the reasons behind that from a real world application perspective is key to understanding the topic areas. So in year 1, in year 12, if you've gone through inflation and you're sitting there and understanding the theory, the problem that most students have is they don't marry up the real world application with the content. Excuse me. So in order to do that, you have to be engaged with what's going on and around you. And I know it's a simple, oh, why don't you just read the FT, get a subscription, etc. No, we can't. It's not as easy as that, because that doesn't place a system or a process in place in identifying or achieving a goal in mind. So the way I would do this or approach this is making sure that you've got that passion back into your economics, or you're gaining that passion. Make sure you've got your notifications enabled. They come straight to your phone or your email from the Guardian, from the BBC. EdGenie sends out a real world application email every Monday. So you'll get this after this video or this webinar, and we'll go through it. Understand what's happened this week and compare it to last week. What's happened in the news and in the economy with regards to economic growth? Oh, Boris Johnson's left. Oh, who's going to replace him? Does that mean politically that we're going to have different maybe economic policies, macroeconomic objectives? Is that what's going to change? From a micro perspective, oh, do we think the new prime minister that's incoming going to have a positive effect on the supply side of labor, or are they going to have a negative effect? Okay, so understanding these whilst going through the news and linking it up with your syllabus and what you've learned is so crucial. I actually can't envisage a scenario where you're learning economics or something around business where you're not doing that. And trust me when I say this, you won't get that ARA start if you don't do that. Okay, so start now, basically. Moving on, I mentioned, and I touched upon it earlier, using the syllabus. Now, a lot of you, believe it or not, I get so many students throughout the year going, Emre, what's the syllabus? What do you mean by syllabus? And I'm dumbfounded whenever I hear this, because surely you should be reviewing and going through the syllabus in order to enter that exam come May and June. So you need to be going through the syllabus step by step, understanding the framework and the topics and how deep you need to go into understanding those topics in order to see where you are in that knowledge gap or that knowledge spectrum. So what I would advise you to do is review that syllabus and go, right, what did I go through in year 12? And marry that up with my notes that you've had or that you've made across the year. And if you haven't done that yet and you're not sure where your gaps are, make sure you do that over the summer. You've literally got 6 weeks. And if you do that, trust me, first of all, you're going to have that retrieval kind of learning where you're going through your notes again, you're understanding everything, and you're also matching it up with the syllabus, going tick, 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 tick. Checklist is covered. Of course, you can marry it up with going through a platform like EdGenie. Go through it. Right, have I done demand and supply? Oh no, I'm missing the evaluation that goes into supply side policies, for example. And if you can do something like that, perfect. I'm going to come to the big red star in the middle in a second. Moving to the top right into elaborate or the elaboration learning technique, okay, which I'm going to delve into in a little bit. But what this is basically is when you're learning something, question it. Always question it. Challenge the status quo. Not just challenging the status quo, but before you get to that, ask questions. What? Who? How? How long? Who did it impact? And this is basically Economics 101. It's discussing the economic agents or understanding the impacts on economic agents like consumers, firms, making sure that you're linking it to how it impacted government revenues, for example. This is key. So say you're learning about, you're going through the syllabus and you're actively seeing in the news, oh, okay, someone actually just suggested that we might have deflation by the end of the year. Well, that's weird. So how would you understand that using the elaboration technique? And the way you would do that is you would start questioning it. You would go, who said it? Okay, Michael Burry, the person who predicted the financial crash in 2008 and someone who actually was a star in a big financial services film called The Big Short. I'm sure, let me know if you've seen that film. If you haven't, it's a great kind of introduction into the world of finance. And as I'm sure a lot of you would want to go and do some finance. So if you are explaining or trying to gather information about this topic, you're going, who said this? Why did they say this? What were the reasons behind them saying this? How serious are they? Who will the deflation impact the most? What is the cause of deflation? And so forth. And you start hitting this momentum of analysis, and then when you start challenging it, what does this depend on? You start asking yourself these questions, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you have a scenario where you've elaborated on a specific concept or a question, and you know all about it now. And by utilizing kind of active recall, etc., you can start gaining the momentum of understanding a topic rather than just learning it and banking on you remembering certain concepts associated with it. And that's something with economics that we're not going to allow at all. You do not just learn, we have to understand, to the extent that when you come to the exam period, you don't need to revise anything. You just start answering, you just answer questions, you know everything basically. And that's the position that we're going to get to. That's the position that a lot of our subscribers find themselves in because they embed these systems within within their mindset. And in the summer as well, something called pluralistic testing, very similar to elaboration technique, utilizing active learning or reviewing the syllabus essentially, is making sure that you're looking at a certain concept all the time. So when you're watching the news or you're sitting there and going through the syllabus and you're going, right, what else is linked with this? Right, what topics can we discuss? What keywords, key economic terms are appropriate for this topic area? And I'll give you an example. When you're talking about taxation, okay, taxation is a big topic area, right? What kind of taxation are we talking about? We're talking about maybe corporation tax. So that's a tax on profits. Now, how does that impact anyone? Right, it's going to impact firms, okay? And you're going to go, right, how does that impact firms? Who else does it impact? So if it impacts firms in the way that, oh, they'll have less profits, they might invest less in research and development, they might innovate less. And then you start going down this rabbit hole of analysis, which is great. But then you can move on to something else. If corporation tax increases, let's say, who else gets impacted by this? Not just firms, but aren't employees going to get impacted? Because they're paying all this money towards tax, so employees are going to feel the brunt of that tax that the firm's paying, and hence what's going to happen is they're going to maybe make them redundant, right? Who else does it impact? Oh, governments. So the government revenue might increase or decrease depending on how high they increase the tax. Who else is it going to impact? Oh, okay, it might impact firms overseas, not just in the UK. So that's something that we need to consider. So when you're looking at a question or a topic or a concept, what parts of the syllabus can we refer it to? And this, again, those four elements together are really and truly the strongest foundational parts of your knowledge base for your economics journey in A levels. Now, how do you actually get all this? How do you learn? How do you make sure that you're understanding all of these? You're making sure that you get that email coming through to your mobile phone every single day, and it's through forming your habits. And this is something that I've learned and we've kind of preached to our students over the years as a result of reading one book. And I advise all of you to read that book. And that book is by an author called James Clear, and it's a book on atomic habits. So let me know if you have read that book and your thoughts on it as well. I would love to understand, because whoever I've spoken to about this book, honestly, it's been a life-changing scenario for them. So they read it within a day, within 2 days, and they've said, right, let's implement these habits, the habit-forming rituals into our lives. And I'll give you a couple examples of that. One of my favorite mottos is actually based on something that was with regards to forming your habits, and that's win the day. And that's basically suggesting, right, why don't you improve 1% every day? And basically what that suggests is do something every day that's going to improve yourself, your learning, your economics grade by 1%. So nothing major, nothing too drastic, make it realistic and improving that. Right, and that compounds over time. And that is one of the pieces of advice that I'm going to come to in due course as well, by the way. So of all the A-star level students, literally all of them, I've had loads of interviews with, I think we had about 32 in the end, over the last, not just the last year, but over when we had our cohort from before as well, those that got A-stars. And the one thing that they said was consistency. And I will elaborate on that later, excuse the pun. But yeah, improve yourself 1% every day. Another thing is remove frictions. So what that means is remove anything that makes it difficult for you to start learning or to make sure you're introduced, like an elaboration technique. Right, maybe today's elaboration technique or elaborate event is all about inflation. Right, every day or every other day we want to have this kind of note-taking scenario where we build a mind map of elaborating on a specific question or a topic, just so we've got our mind consistently engaged. So how do you do that? You remove friction. So you make sure, maybe you put a time in the calendar, your alarm goes off, right, let's sit down for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just building that mind map on a specific concept. Go to the syllabus, go over here, go on to EdGenie, right? Okay, demand and supply, or whether it's a pricing mechanism, right? Let's go and learn about that. And that is something that's so essential, okay? And that's removing the friction. So making sure that you're stopping anything from getting in your way. Because most of the time, well, I mean, I do the same thing. What normally gets in the way? Oh, I can't be bothered to get started. I can't be, oh, it's going to take too long. The mountain is too high to climb. So if you do these little kind of habit changing rituals, or habit forming rituals, should I say, in a more positive tone, honestly, you will reap the benefits very, very quickly, genuinely. So all of that is all cumbersome of an A-star level student. And this is just something that I've tried to simplify for you to be prepared for September. And these are very different ways of approaching it, rather than the traditional, oh, make sure you do this, you make sure you open your books, and make sure you just read around the subject, etc. So this is something slightly different, and it's effective. Okay, so if you have any questions on this, just let me know in the chat or the comments, and I'm happy to answer them for you. Okay, so just think to yourself now, how can you actually implement this during that summer period whilst you're on holiday, lying on a beach in Bora Bora? Maybe you're sitting there in the mountains in the Swiss Alps, just hiking across, or maybe you're just in London, or you're in the northeast in Newcastle, you're in wherever you are in Devon, maybe, or Manchester, etc. Wherever you are, you have to make sure that passion for economics is always there throughout that summer period. So when it comes to the actually the crux of the academic year, your life is going to be so easy. Trust me when I say that. Okay, make sure you build those habits of getting that AA star from today.